Hi, everybody. So, just a little bit about myself to introduce myself. My name is Jennifer Aguilera. I am in the literacy program, and my topic was perspectives of English language learners tutoring in universities. My research interests include literacy, English as a new language for higher education, English language learners, and TESOL. So basically, the full spectrum of English language learning and teaching it as well. My work experience includes St. John's University. I worked at the intensive English program as well as the ESL program and in the literacy graduate program on the Staten Island campus. I also taught fourth grade ESL in the DOE, in the Department of Education in New York City in Queens. And I'm currently at CUNY Queens College. I teach undergrad and graduate TESOL program, mostly student teaching. And I am also at Stony Brook University at an intensive English program. Another thing about me is that I have volunteered and lived and worked teaching English in Italy. So to get started, I will share my screen and start my presentation. So for my research questions, they were, what are ESL perspectives of tutoring services provided in an urban public four-year university? And how can university-based tutoring centers better meet the needs of ESL students? The theoretical framework that I worked with was self-determination theory. Oops, sorry. Self-determination theory. This was defined by Deci and Ryan, and they stated that the innate natural propensity to engage in one's interests and exercise one's capacity, and in doing so, to seek and conquer optimal challenges. Basically, what this means is that it's of one's own will that they want to or not want to accomplish something. Other variations of this term can be motivation, intrinsic motivation, and more. Let's move that out of the way. So part of my literature review was I looked at university language courses, tutoring programs, and motivation. So just briefly, because I'm sure most of us know, university language courses, so students have to take a required exam in order to enter the university. Once invited into the university, they take there's options of non-credit and credit programs depending on the level that they place at. The coursework, the fundamentals are usually the same at all universities: reading, writing, speaking, and listening. And then there are some fun classes like grammar, pronunciation, or even still, they have cooking, nutrition, um, anything being a student in New York City, things of that nature, which can be fun. Tutoring programs, we're going to concentrate mostly on group tutoring versus one on one tutoring throughout my study. And for motivation, Gardner stated there were two types of motivation: the motivation to learn and classroom learning motivation. And basically, the difference can be exemplified by majoring in a language versus taking a language as a requirement. My research design was an explanatory sequential mixed methods study. So, with my two questions, I had two phases. In phase one, I conducted a survey. I sent out a survey to the students to gain their perspectives of the tutoring centers, how they felt about them. In phase two, I conducted a focus group interview with a small group of students. This way, I was able to interpret the perspectives from the survey a little bit more in depth through conversations that I was having with the students. In my phase one, I used an electronic survey via Google. I sent it to students, and it only took about 5 to 10 minutes, depending on their reading level. I sent it to the students at an intensive English program, and students were from first year students at the university. They ranged between 18 and 21 years old. Of those students, 48 of them, 35 studied at this specific program for at least one semester, and 13 of them, this was their first semester with the program. So again, reiterating, this was their first year. Since this survey was done on Google, it was collected electronically, and once students submitted their responses, as most of you know, it's automatically saved and it's already organized by summary, individually, and by question, which is really convenient. In addition, I was able to export this and use it into an Excel sheet for further analysis, and then I analyzed it through SPSS. In phase two, this was my qualitative portion. I conducted the small group interview and I recorded it using Zoom with everyone's permission. I sent out letters asking for their permission. Students were encouraged to speak about their perceptions about the tutoring opportunities that were available to them and what their experiences were like. Once they were recorded, I transcribed everything, the whole hour, using pseudonames for the participants, dates, questions from the standardized open-ended interview were typed up, and as I was typing everything up, I was able to then analyze it from there. The participants were chosen based on convenience sampling. I analyzed each portion differently. So my quantitative portion, which was the survey in phase one, I used Pearson R analysis to investigate the strength of a relationship between two quantitative variables. The comparisons made between survey topics related to perceived effectiveness and requirements of tutoring in college tutoring centers. In phase two, this was the interview. This was the qualitative portion. It was described and then it was analyzed using thematic content analysis. This is usually used in qualitative research. More specifically, it's used with interviews. So I coded and I looked for similarities and differences and more. These were some of my quantitative results. So I sought to better understand the relationship between the variables, the questions on the survey, because remember, this was my survey. I looked at the correlation coefficients using a 0.05 p-value and a two-tailed Pearson R analysis. What you see here were only moderate to strong correlations. That's what I only reported. Low correlations were deemed irrelevant for further study, and I did not mention them in my paper. My qualitative results, which again, just as a reminder, were from the small group interview. Deductive coding was done. So I transcribed everything and then I looked for themes throughout. This was a little bit easier since I had already looked up themes from the literature review and I was able to see them as I was transcribing. So what I did was I highlighted, I color coded, and I pulled quotes from the transcription to organize and then reorganize, finding theme within theme until I came up with these four: apprehensions, perceived benefits, tutoring preferences, and language confusion. So some of the apprehensions that students had were that they were embarrassed, shy, and they literally said they were plain lazy. Some of the perceived benefits of going to tutoring were social networking, or they were able to make friends at the school, and their communication skills. So direct quotes from the students were that English is a common language, platform for all around the world. So no matter where they go, even if they don't speak the language, like Chinese to Greek, right? Then they would be able to speak in English because that Greek person will know English, possibly, and then they can speak English. So then that's the commonality. In addition, they said most of the academic resources are in English and they want to further their education. So they think that learning English is going to help them with that. Some of the tutoring preferences that they had really depended on what they wanted during the session. So they liked group as well as one on one. They liked group because they were able to speak to a lot of people, hear everybody's opinion, hear their accents. And those that wanted one on one, or the times they wanted one on one, was to help with individual homework. Maybe because they didn't want to have people other questions. They had specific questions for a specific homework. Overall, they did say that they speaking with native students, no matter what the situation was always beneficial. And my last finding in my qualitative portion was language confusion. So I specifically asked in the survey and in the interview, what did they think about tutoring being a requirement or a suggestion? And it seems as though they might have gotten those words mixed up. They thought it was a requirement, however, it was not. And then I said, oh, well, there's a difference between suggestion and requirement. And then they changed their mind because they knew it wasn't a requirement. When I converged the qualitative and quantitative data, I found that the English learning preferences, perceived effectiveness, and the requirements, these were the percentages that I found. So for group tutoring and one-on-one tutoring, the interview confirmed the same percentages, that more or less it's kind of even. They don't really have a specific preference for one or the other. Having events at the tutoring center, 50% of students did agree with them, and the interview did confirm this as well. However, it also added that they wanted more events and a variety of events. Perceived effectiveness. Feeling more confident after going to tutoring, 60% agreed, 25% strongly agreed. Therefore, a lot of them really did find it that it worked. The interview confirmed this as well. Tutoring helped with their homework. A lot of them agreed or strongly agreed, and the interview confirmed this information. Having conversation partners and helping them with their English, they think that it really did work. And during the interview, students said that no matter what they did during these sessions, it was always beneficial. Now, on to the portion of requirements. Again, there was that difficulty with confusion with suggested versus requirement, so I did make note of that. Something else that I wanted to note was how frequently students went to the tutoring center. And as you can see, almost half of the population went only 2 to 4 times per month, and 12% almost never go. Some of the reasons why they do not go, which was part of my open-ended questions during the survey and during the interview, was they had no time, they were not motivated to go, they were tired or lazy, and those are words from their mouth, or they didn't think that they needed to go. Some other open-ended questions will be spoken about later on. So for my discussion, overall, looking at everything, I found two major themes throughout: perceived benefits and tutoring preferences. So perceived benefits, the self-determination theory that I found in the very beginning of my research determined that to learn the language for the future, they needed it. They felt they needed it and they wanted it, not just for their future, not just for academics, but they also wanted it to be friendly with people. They wanted to be able to talk to people no matter where they go. Their motivation was to get good grades. So some of the benefits included learning a language in general, getting better at the language, and making new friends. With theme two, tutoring preferences, really this was very up in the air. They liked going to group tutoring and they liked going to one on one. There was no separation, there was no difference really. For groups, they wanted to have more conversations and to meet other people. For one on one was more for specific help. Some of the limitations were that my population was all international students. More specifically, 99% of them were Chinese. Another limitation was that there was a small sample size and it was at one university. And just as a reminder, there were 48 students in my study. And lastly, the students' level of English proficiency. So the students that were part of my study were intermediate to advanced in their English level. So this was the only students that were there that participated. Some recommendations for the future. So I created an acronym to help tutoring centers or tutoring programs to help ensure that they are effective for their English language learners. It's called VAT, VAAT, Variety, Availability, Ambassadors, and Teachers. So, variety of activities. So, they don't just want to go to tutoring just to go to tutoring. They would like to have more informal get togethers, like a party or a game night or food night, things of that nature, so that they don't have to feel constrained to having to bring schoolwork or school topics to speak about. Availability, ensuring that there are multiple times and dates and available to students so that they are able to go after class or maybe go home, rest after class, and then come back later. Ambassadors, having tutors available for students when they arrive at the university and as guides around the campus. So when students arrive, any students arrive to a university, they're greeted by school ambassadors to help them with their move-in process, going to school and such. When our English language learners come to the school, we don't think about those difficulties that they may go through. Yes, they're going to be greeted by these same ambassadors. However, there's a language difficulty there. And that's something that needs to be kept in mind. So maybe having separate ambassadors for these students, because the students really talked about that first week feeling very flustered and scared, already scared because they're in a new country or state. And it was a lot of work for them to figure everything out. And lastly, T for teacher help. So during the pandemic, a lot of changes happened with the technology. And again, we sent our students to IT. IT can help, but however, they don't know how to speak to these English language learners, and that's the difficult part. So they were still coming out with a lot of questions. So setting aside time for the teachers or having extra teachers available to help with students' technology. For future research, having a larger sample size would be ideal. Again, my study had 48 students. Having more universities available, only one was used in this study. Having a more diverse population will really help because then you'll be able to get a lot of different opinions. 47 out of 48 of these students were Chinese, so they basically come with more or less the same opinion. Multiple levels of English language learners will help in the future because they will have different points of study that they might need or want for help in tutoring. In addition, having a smaller focus group for the interview would be ideal. My focus group had over 20 participants. Having a smaller group would help students to become less shy and be able to say their opinion a little bit more. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoy my study. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact me. Thank you.